Hey, what's going on? It's Fight Season MMA, and today I want to break down the recent UFC Saudi Arabia card, the first time the UFC has ever been to Saudi Arabia, Robert Whittaker's massive win, Alexander Volkov's a complete domination over Sergey Pavlovich, and some more fights along the way. Let's get right into the video. Okay, so the first fight I want to start with is Robert Whittaker's amazing performance. Robert Whittaker only landed 14 total strikes and put Ikram Eliskerov out in the first round with that incredible uppercut that he threw after using his feints. Robert Whittaker is such an intelligent fighter, and I really do think that we can make a video about this down the line, but I do think that Robert Whittaker's performance warrants him a shot at Sean Strickland for the middleweight title for the two, because ultimately one of them can fight for the middleweight title, and I want to see Whittaker fight for it, but I also want to see Strickland fight for it again. I think ultimately what you need to do though first is have Izzy versus Dricus fight, because if Dricus wins, either one can fight, and if Izzy wins, I don't think a Whittaker rematch is warranted right now, whereas a Strickland rematch would be the best thing. But Robert Whittaker's performance was absolutely amazing. Robert Whittaker was using his feints incredibly well, setting up the jab, being able to do every little thing correct to get Ikram Eliskerov out of his flow in the of his fighting style and making him uncomfortable, which is ultimately the most important thing that you can do to a fighter who is coming up in the rankings. I was super unsure about this fight prior because I didn't know how Robert Whittaker would react to a hungry, up-and-coming Dagestani opponent, but most importantly, on 1 week notice. And I didn't know if Ikram was properly prepared and if he was ready to take on Robert Whittaker, but it was pretty apparent ultimately early that Robert Whittaker was absolutely leagues ahead of Ikram Eliskerov. Now, ultimately, I think Ikram Eliskerov didn't lose any stock here. He stepped up on short notice to take on one of the best middleweights of all time in Robert Whittaker, whereas Robert Whittaker did what he was supposed to do, knock out a lower opponent than he is, someone who's not even ranked, someone who came on and showed his replacement, even though he did have a full fight camp prior, but he did his job incredibly well. And I think Robert Whittaker deserves his flowers and possibly even a title shot after it. And the next fight I want to go to is Sergey Pavlovich versus Alexander Volkov, and God, did I get this fight wrong. Sergey Pavlovich is an absolute monster until he fought Alexander Volkov, some people who have trained together, and Alexander Volkov did what I said he had to do to win the fight, and his only shot at winning in the fight was being strategic, staying in the outside, and using that jab and teep kick to wobble Sergey Pavlovich. Pavlovich's face was absolutely grotesque, as someone would say, after that first and second round with Volkov, because he was eating all the jabs from Alexander Volkov right to the face, and there was nothing he was doing to switch up his strategy to be able to go and avoid the punch or dodge a hook coming. He just was sitting there eating everything that was coming at him, and you saw versus Tom Aspinall that was not going to work, and that was something that we should have looked farther into, but I think we just looked at and assumed because Tom Aspinall is one of the greatest heavyweights in the UFC right now, if not the best heavyweight in the UFC right now. But ultimately, this is a massive disappointment for Sergey Pavlovich. I thought he had this fight in the absolute bag. I thought he was able to do the correct things to beat Volkov, and I thought Pavlovich was going to be right and back in the title mixture. Whereas now he's going to have to go down, probably fight someone like a Jailton Almeida, or fight someone who's coming off a win like a Sergey Spivak or a Marcin Tybura. I don't know if he's fought either of those two, but Alexander Volkov is here to stay. And I do think possibly another rematch with Cyril Gane might be warranted. I think a fight with Tom Aspinall again, possibly if he does retain the belt. I think a Curtis Blades loss could be good for Volkov. But ultimately, Volkov is in a very interesting position with his win over Pavlovich. Next, I want to go to the Shira Bullet fight, and this was a fight that everyone was saying on Twitter that Shira Bullet is a fraud, Shira Bullet is this, Shira Bullet is that, and the commentator team was writing his obituary, and what did Shira Bullet do? Went and got the finish. Ultimately, I know that Shira Bullet is one of the best up-and-coming prospects, and he cannot fight in the U.S. because of that eye issue that he has, where I think he's blind in one eye, but Shara still has the ability to become one of the best in the UFC middleweight division. He has a lot of holes to fill, but against Turkali today, he did that, and he ultimately got the finish, got the performance of the night bonus, and I think he's going to set himself up with a nice opponent next. I know Bo Nickel possibly called him out, where he said afterwards he tweeted Shevchenko that he was talking about with the bullet, but I do think that would be a little bit too hard of a step up for Shara, but I do think another fight in Abu Dhabi for Shara would be the way to go. Okay, lastly, I want to talk quickly about the Volkan Oezdemir-Johnny Walker fight and of how Johnny Walker got absolutely sent to the moon. Johnny Walker's chin is one of the worst the UFC has ever seen, and he is one of the most fragile fighters in regards to which chin that the UFC has ever seen, especially in the light heavyweight division. There, you got some heavy strikers up there that you got to be able to take a shot. And Johnny Walker is never going to be able to rise up in the rankings because he cannot absorb a punch. You look at this Volkan Oezdemir fight where he got absolutely bodied by Volkan, and you look at the Jamal Hill fight where he got absolutely bodied by Jamal Hill. Magomed Ankalaev in his last fight just hit Johnny Walker once and just sent him to the sky. Now, ultimately, Johnny Walker is still super fun, still super amazing as a talent in the UFC, massive, but he needs to get this chin under control. But that still doesn't discredit Volkan. Volkan had an amazing fight. He was able to land that shot on Jamal Hill, and he should ultimately fight someone up in the rankings next time. All right, thank you guys so much for tuning into this video of Fight Season MMA. Please let me know what you think about Robert Whittaker's performance over Ikram Eliskerov and what you think about Alexander Volkov's performance over Sergey Pavlovich and all the other fights on the card. Please leave a like and subscribe since we're closing in on 100 subscribers. I would be overjoyed to hit that very soon. If you really enjoyed the content, like I said, leave a like and subscribe, and I will see you very soon.